The goal today is to really go over the actual pipeline of managing and operating your leads to get your deals. Okay, so we're going to be talking about the acquisition pipeline, but I really kind of want to hone into doing acquisitions first. I know we have a lot of questions on how this actually works, the nitty gritty to templates to what happens when you move things across the stage and so forth. And that's kind of why I want to dedicate maybe this entire time towards this. First things first, right? If you get into your system, I'm assuming you've already uploaded data, right, into your CRM. I want to go over every single stage in this pipeline so we all know what is going on. Okay. Um, because there's a lot, right? And unless I break it down step by step, some people are going to get confused. Oh, what should I do here? Is this one automatic? Does it fire automatically through automations, or do I have to manually do it here? Of course, it's going to be a mixture of both, right? It's impossible to automate everything 100% because we still need a human touch. Okay. Um, and, okay, so let's just dive right into it and just start explaining. So the very first one, if you go into your system and you click on your opportunities and you switch to the acquisition pipeline, this is where you're going to be managing all your deals. Okay. Um, Whether it's direct to seller or direct to agent, it does not matter. Okay. Whether you're working on off-market deals or you're working on on-market deals, it does not matter. All your leads will go inside this pipeline. If you're doing PPL or you're doing PPC, or maybe you want leads to come in from your website, right? Inbound leads. Well, then this is where you're going to be managing all your properties. Okay. So keep that in mind. Everything will be managed here. This is your acquisition. This is where you call and lock up a deal. This is where you send an offer and lock up a deal. This is where you send your contract and lock up a deal. Okay. Everything happens inside this pipeline. Okay. So again, I'm assuming you've already uploaded properties yesterday. We showed you, I think we uploaded 28 properties into this demo account right here to showcase. But right off the bat, notice how it's shown in the new untouched column, right? And so, well, let's first off understand what new untouched is, right? New untouched means you have not done anything with this leads whatsoever. It maybe came into your system as inbound, or maybe you pulled a list and you uploaded it into your system. New untouched, you have not touched this lead yet. Okay. And then, of course, we'll deep dive into everything inside of each one of these cards and so forth along the way. The next stage, of course, is discovery. Okay. Now, these ones, let's go back to new untouched. These ones will automatically populate in here when you upload your list. Okay, for the new untouched. Now, if you're doing PPL or PPC, you might have to configure, right? Let's say your website form, so it imports into the new untouched right away, and we'll show you how to do that later. If you're doing PPL, let's say you're using need to sell miles fast or whatever, again, same idea. You need that integration, so it goes directly into the new untouched. Okay, but again, we will show you that later. So discovery is manual. Okay. This is the first stage after you get a brand new lead, and it's generally for discovering the property, right? Whether you call that agent, right? Whether that's you going in and checking it out on Zillow, looking at pictures, maybe deep diving into the property before you have a conversation. But essentially, discovery is you trying to look at the deal, right? In general. And most cases, people use this where they try to call the agent or try to call the seller. Maybe they just don't answer, right? So maybe they stick in discovery for a minute. But that's generally what discovery means, right? We're trying to discover the property. We're trying to have a conversation with somebody. And this has nothing to do with setting offers yet. This has nothing to do with follow-ups yet. This is just you initially going into it. Okay. But again, that is manual. So you're going to take a lead, you're going to be able to move it over. You're working on this lead. You might go into the acquisitions inside of here, and you might adjust any of these numbers, whatever you see fit. Now, a lot of people don't even mess with these and they just go send LOIs right away. And that's perfectly fine too. But let's say you did have a conversation with that agent or with that seller, and they tell you, oh, the PITI is not this and the rent is not this. Well, you can adjust them here. Okay. If they say, oh, well, my total mortgage on the property is not that, then you would change it. Maybe it's a cash deal and you don't agree with the rehab amount on this property. So again, you could adjust it as well. Maybe it's, I don't know, the ARV, you did a double check and you want to be able to change it. You can do so at this time. But nonetheless, a lot of people, the reason why they come to 2.0 or BILT in general is because of the automations. They don't want to do all the heavy lifting first. They want to let the automations do it, the calculations do it for them so they can just send LOIs. Okay. Now, you'll notice in some previous examples, some people move these stages around, right? Meaning they might want to send offer the very first thing and they care less about discovery. They just want to send LOIs, and that's fine. You can always readjust these by going to your pipelines, clicking on edit, and saying, let me just move the interested send offer to the very first one. So we're just sending LOIs directly. But I'm not going to keep that change. So let's just go back and keep it to the default right now and go forward. So the next stage we have here is responded set status. Okay, so let's first understand that for a second. And again, I do have it broken down into this right here so you can kind of read more. It is in that same spreadsheet that I shared with you guys the other day, and it's also in the Help Center. But that's why we're doing this video, right? So there's a video version of it as well. So responded set status. Well, let's first understand what this means, right? If we are, just by looking at this, it means the contact responded. They responded to whatever message you sent them, whatever offer you sent them, they're going to show up here. Okay. And I know a lot of people like to use the conversations tab, and that's a good method as well. But at the same time, you could always go ahead and just manage them here. As it's mentioned, responded. So let's say I send an LOI to somebody, and maybe it's in the follow-up. Maybe they declined that offer, but they responded eventually. Okay. At any points in time, whether the lead is right here in the interested send offer, or it's in the offer follow-up, or then the no response, if they respond to any one of these right here, it'll automatically push the lead back to responded. Okay. And again, this could be they rejected your offer. Could be they're not interested. Could be yes, they're interested, right? So pros or cons, right? Positive or negative, it doesn't matter. So anytime someone responds, it's going to push the lead back over here. Now there are exceptions for that, and then we'll get to that in a second, because sometimes you're already having a good conversation with someone, and maybe now it's in negotiations. And so we don't want the lead to go all the way back to your responded set status. We want it to stay into the in negotiations, which is over here. Okay. Now, again, we'll get to that in a second. But again, so you're going to have somebody respond to this lead. Well, what does that mean? They responded through email, they responded through text, maybe they had an inbound call. It's going to push the lead over here. It is your job now to set the status, meaning you're going to dispo the lead accordingly, allocate the lead accordingly to one of the other parts of the pipeline. So for example, if someone rejected your offer, okay, well, what are you going to do with that? Well, we have a rejected offer stage, right? Offer rejected. So you could just throw this lead into the offer rejected. Now, what this will do is if they haven't received, so we have multiple templates and multiple follow-ups that go out, right? One of those is our discount offer, okay? Again, you don't have to play with it. It does it for you, right? But it lowers our assignment fee a bit, gives more cash to the seller on a creative finance deal, okay? Or let's say it's a cash deal and it gives more cash to the seller, reducing our assignment fee. So the same idea, okay? And so how it initially works is that if you send the offer, it's going to follow up, right? And say, hey, did you get my offer? Okay. And it'll move it automatically from the interested send offer to the follow-up stage. Okay. Then it will follow up again and send them a discount offer. Then it'll follow up again with another follow-up, right? And so if at any points in time they respond, it's going to move back to the responded set status. Now, again, they rejected your offer. So what are we going to do? We're going to throw them into the offer rejected. And at this time, if they have not received a discount offer through the follow-ups, now they will receive it. Okay. And it's not right away. It's going to be within 24 hours because we don't want to spam them immediately. because they already rejected our offer. So the moment we put it in this offer rejected, if they've gotten the discount, then what's going to happen is it's actually going to bounce back to the responded for you to say, hey, like they've already rejected your offer. What do you want to do now? Right? They've rejected your discount offer. What do you want to do now? Right? At this point in time, now you have the ability of again setting the status and saying, okay, well, maybe we'll want to do a task follow-up or a nurture or so forth. Right? Now, direct to seller and direct to agent have two different nurture follow-up systems. Okay. Direct to agent is more fast paced, right? It's going to be like a 2 week task, right? And then direct to seller is going to be more of a longer 45 day, 45 day, 45 day, right? And so just keep that in mind. And you can tweak those time frames. If you don't like the 2 weeks, you don't like the 45 days, you don't like the messaging, you can always change it. And we'll show you how to do that later. But so right now, if they don't respond to any one of your initial offers or your follow-ups or your offer rejected follow-ups, right? The discount offers, they will always show up in the no response. And notice how these are auto, right? So you don't ever have to touch these columns whatsoever. These ones are completely automated. Don't move things from here, right? Don't touch them that are in there. Now you can click on them, you can check them out, right? And you can view the deal structure of that property and so forth. But you don't want to really move them here unless maybe you called them, right? So for example, offer no response. What are we going to do in that situation? We're probably going to call them, right? We're probably going to send them another email. We're probably going to send them another text. We're probably going to do something to get a hold of them at that point in time. Now, I know a lot of people don't worry about that, right? They're like, oh, yeah, the system followed up, whatever. We're just going to let it go. But your competitors are calling these people, right? They're sending a carrier pigeon over to them to get a hold of them somehow, right? Like that's what they're doing. And that's why they're having a competitive edge. Again, you could just take all the no responses and just throw them into a nurture, right? You could, right? That's completely up to you. But also, it's also just better to just pick up the phone because they probably didn't get your email. Maybe it went to their spam inbox, right? Maybe for whatever reason they changed their email, right? And so we have just the incorrect data, and so they're not getting our offer. So what are we going to do in that state? Just ignore it? That's up to you, right? I would suggest at that point in time, you figure out why you're getting a lot of no responses. And that typically means we maybe just didn't set up our email system correctly. Maybe we got the incorrect data, or maybe we just need more touches with them, right? Either or, right? Different channel of targeting. And so I know a lot of you guys want to send LOI blasts, just emails to them, but sometimes you still need to pick up a phone, right? Maybe you need to text them, right? Maybe you need to do something else. So that's what I suggest you guys do with the no responses. But again, right, if you wanted to change this where it's just skips this completely and puts them in a task follow-up, you're more than welcome to do so. So I want to talk about something real quick before I move forward. So offer follow-ups, those of you who are already in Easy LOI prior, because this is a very similar function, okay? You'll know that we had all of the follow-ups like in each column, right? So you can see where they are in the follow-up. We no longer want that many columns, right? So we wanted to compact it. We wanted to make it easier so we can kind of see everything. So instead, what we did was we designed it in a way where you'll still be able to see it through the tags, okay? Now, these tags don't really do anything but give you information, right? And so if you look at this deal right here, you'll notice a few things. Well, number one, it's an on-market deal, okay? Number two, it's going to say offer sent. Okay, so we did send an offer on this deal, but at the same time, it is an on-market hybrid offer that was sent to them. Okay, so now we know what type of offer was sent to them. And then it says offer follow-up 1, offer discount 2, offer follow-up 3, and then of course they got the tag no response to offer, means they didn't respond to any of our offers. Okay, so like you'll be able to keep track of it even though you don't know which follow-up sequence it was in, like an easy LOI, we had it spread out. Okay. So this way it's not cluttering your entire pipeline. Okay. And again, there's a few more things you could do in here. So if you go to manage fields, and this is not something that, it's set as a default, but you can basically add more information for your context. So let's just say I remove some of these because some of these are kind of irrelevant. and maybe you wanted to know the deal type. Maybe you wanted to know if they were on or off market. And then went ahead and clicked on apply, right? Let's not select all pipelines. But now we can see, more information on these cards directly, right? Without actually going into them. Okay. Now, again, it just depends on what data is in there. So like this one didn't specify what deal type, but this one does, right? And so if I go move over to these are the new ones we just upload. All of them are going to state what they are: hybrid, right? This one's a sub two. This one's a hybrid. Let's keep going. Let's see if we can. This one's a seller finance, right? And so as you can see, not every you'll be able to see what type of deal it is right away by going inside there. Now, again, if you go inside and you change, let's say hybrid, that's mentioned in here, and you change it to, let's say, seller finance, well, it's going to change it on the actual card itself too. So just keep that in mind, right? It will take a second. Yeah, there we go. So we're going ahead and update it. So that's something for viewing, right? But it's not really that important, right? But that's just something I thought you guys would probably want or have a question on right away. So let's get right back into this, right? So as I said earlier, task follow-up or nurture is a way for us to continuously follow up on that lead. Okay. Why did we design this? Well, number one, just because a seller tells you they're not interested or they reject your offer, typically that means that they're just not ready, right? They're not ready to hear about your creative finance deal. They're not ready to accept your cash deal. Maybe the seller is not interested at this moment. Maybe they're not in enough pain, right? And so the three-step follow-up system that we already have in there is just not enough, right? And so at this time, we put them into a task follow-up, right? Or a nurture. And what that means is that we could always go back and resend them offers later. Just go switch them back to the beginning, right? If we wanted to. Or where this time we can actually talk to them and figure out what the situation is. Or maybe we go back to the MLS and see, has their price changed, right? Has the asking price changed on that? Maybe they've paid down on their mortgage. Maybe they've caught up on their foreclosure. Maybe they've done something, right? And this gives us 2 weeks, let's say, for the on market and 45 days for direct to seller for us to be like, well, we don't need to worry about this until that task comes back, right? Because we're working on other deals. But when that task does come to you, it's like, oh, I just talked to this person 2 weeks ago. They denied me or they weren't interested. Let me try again, right? And let me put them back through this entire follow-up sequence because maybe they just didn't know back then or they just weren't interested back then, but now we can attack them again. And I know a lot of you guys might be thinking, oh, well, aren't you spamming these people? The reality is no, they're not. It's not considered spam until they tell you to fuck off, right? Um, that's just how it is. You're going to follow up with them until they die. And so that's the continuous goal of this. The next stage here is the in negotiations or offer accepted. So it works for both ways. And the reason why we named it this way was because a lot of us like to, I guess it's the new fad, right? Well, if they've already showed some sort of positive intent, well, why don't we just send them a contract at this point, right? We do a deep dive analysis on the actual deal at this point, and instead of talking to the seller or the agent, well, why don't we just send them an official contract, which kind of forces them to send that contract to the seller, right? And so that's what a lot of us are doing right now, and it's actually has some really good conversion rates, and you guys will be able to test it out yourselves and see what you like better. But you don't have to send the contract right here. This is just in general, if you think about it, in negotiations, you had a positive response from that agent, from that seller, in regards to your offer. Okay. Now, you might not be there yet in terms of exact negotiations and you got a contract signed, but they showed some interest. They weren't negative, right? Maybe they want you to reevaluate. Maybe they want you to have another conversation with the seller if you're talking to an agent, right? You want to get on a three-way. So that's promising, right? It's no longer just cold. It's no longer just, oh, we don't know what their response is yet. We already know they're interested at this point. Okay. And again, like I said, the numbers don't always have to make sense at this time, but at least you know this is the closest thing you have to work on. Okay. Now, if they respond to any of the communication that happens in the negotiation or the offer accepted, it will not move back to your response, right? Set status or responded set status. It will not move back. The reason for this is, again, we don't want you to get mixed up. Like where'd my leads go? And this is one of the complicated things we had to fix over time. Um, it just kept moving back, and we would lose our leads, our most important leads, right? So we wanted to keep them separate. And again, some people like to move this entire column to the front, right? So they know that that's the most important thing that they're going to work on a day-to-day basis. You could do that. Just go to the pipelines, edit, and just move it forward, right? Just push it all the way up to the top. So that is up to you. But for now, we're going to leave it as is. But yeah, so in negotiations, offer accepted, right? At this point in time, really is where you're going to be evaluating the deal, okay? Because automations are cool, automated calculators are cool, but we all know this. Every time you analyze a creative finance deal, it's done differently. There's no one size fits all for a creative finance deal. No matter how good your calculator is and how advanced it is, you're still tweaking something, right? So this is where we suggest people to pull up an actual spreadsheet, right? Pull up an actual spreadsheet and actually analyze the deal. Okay. Now, of course, we have a bunch of calculators that are given to you guys as free resources. You're more than welcome to use them. And I'm sure a lot of you guys are in some communities like Sub2, Astro, whatever, and they have those calculators as well for you, right? So pick and choose. I don't care what calculator you use as long as you're able to evaluate a deal, okay? But if you are interested in our calculators, let me pull it up. So in the free resources, you get these, right? And inside number 2 is all of our calculators. And as you can see, we have creative calculators, we have flip calculators, creative flip calculators, hard money loan calculators, long-term rentals, MLS outreach, multifamily, short-term rentals, so forth, right? And we have some tutorials, but really it's up to you to figure out, reverse engineer, and work your deal because not every single property is going to be evaluated the same way, okay? So if we just go into one of them, let's say the creative deal calculator, I think the top is for actual cash deals, but at the bottom here, you have the ability of switching between short-term, long-term, figuring out a purchase price that works, figuring out a cash down amount, are you using private money or cash, right? What type of financing percentage, let's say you're working with, and you can kind of modify it. Again, there's more advanced calculators than this. I'm not going to go over calculators today. There's just too many of them, right? And you have to find one that you like, that you're comfortable with one that maybe you have a full-blown tutorial with that you like. Just use it, right? It doesn't have to be perfect. But what really needs to matter is you are taking into consideration all your 7 entry fees, right? And that property is cash flowing and it has a cash on cash return and so forth. So you can actually dispo the deal. So enough about calculators though. But let me repeat that. If it's in the negotiations or the offer accepted tab, this is the time to do a deep analysis. Okay. If it's a cash deal, well, you're probably going to do a deep analysis with your cash deal. You might even get involved to your hard money lender to give you a term sheet before you finalize the contract, whatever it may be, right? I don't know what your go-to method is. But a lot of us like to lock up contracts before we go and get to lenders. So that's where it is there. And of course, at that point in time, you want to go ahead and update these values based on, let's say, your evaluations. Okay, just so you can have them as record. You can always attach more documentation to this as well, PDFs and whatnot. There's not really any limitation for that. So like if I went into this contact and I went and clicked on it, well, I have an entire section to upload maybe my screenshots of my analysis, my contracts, my term sheets, my everything by just going into the Documents Hub over here to the right. And so if I go ahead and click on Documents right here, you can upload whatever you want, right? So as you can see here, there's already a few examples of it. There's CSV files, there's agreements and so forth that we've tested through it. But yeah, so just keep that in mind. Another thing is you're probably like again, there's a few things in here and there's ways to move things around. Before we get into, contracts sent out and stuff, I think I skipped a few steps. But if I go into any lead that's in here, right? Instead of moving them manually through, a hover, right? And you move it over, you could move them by changing the stage right here. Okay. So I know a lot of people prefer this method, so might as well just mention it right here. You can move stages by just switching clicking, right? I can switch this back to new one touch and it'll move back, right? I can also go ahead and update my opportunity value. So if you already know, let's say it's more in the negotiations, right? If you already know like what you're going to be making on that deal, you can update that, right? So it can show up on your dashboard. Well, what deals you're currently working on that are really close to the finish line, right? And I think a lot of people want data metrics, right? Data, dashboard metrics. So it makes your life, you pretty and you know what's going on in your business, right? More analytical people probably prefer this. But at the same time, right, you have the ability of doing everything that you want to do through here. Okay. So I forgot to mention as well. So there's a general property info tab in here. This is where if you mention the property type in the CSV file as an optional field, it would have showed up here. If you did bring in the bed and bath counts, it would show up here, right? If you did bring in square footage, it would show up here. And so forth. All of these values you could import from that bulk upload, right? Now, a lot of this, like additional property info, condition, motivation, timeline, right, is going to be your conversation with that agent, with that seller. And so it's good to write your information here on that particular property so that you can kind of keep, no matter who's working on the lead on your team, will be able to see what's going on. And so you don't forget. And of course, you still have the regular notes, typing up a note so someone can see it on your team. It'll always mention who and what time submitted that and so forth. Now, again, right, this is where if you want something changed in here and you want additional information, you can always add a new custom value, right? I know some people like to have the ability of adding screenshots here. You can do that as well. If you want to be able to put, a link to images like Dropbox, Google Drive, whatever. So it's one click. You can do so here as well. So figure out what you want in that aspect of things. The next thing is, of course, booking appointments. This is where you, of course, want to set up a calendar prerequisite. And we have plenty of tutorials with setting up calendars, whether it's a phone call, Zoom call, whatever, just some sort of meeting with that seller or that agent. Let's say they say, oh, just call me back on X day, right? This is where you would put that in so that you can kind of keep track of things. And again, same thing with the tasks here. If you wanted to do a manual task to set it for a due date and assign it to a specific user on your team, maybe it's yourself, and put a little description, it will show up on your tasks on your dashboard for you to check on a daily basis and give you notifications and so forth. So this is where you'll manage every single one of your leads. Now, I know we have this payments tab in here. Most of you guys aren't going to use it. This is like a default high level thing, and they're still working on it. So don't even worry about that. But so that's in terms of, because I know I've skipped some steps and now we're going back, the little nitty gritty details inside of each one of these cards. But let's move forward with the contract sent out. Now, again, today we're not going to go into setting up your contracts, right? But I do want to show you, how easy it is to click a button and generate that contract right away, right? So let's just say it's this property again right here. I can easily select, and here, let's go to a brand new one, right? Let's say it's this one. Okay, so this one will be blank, right? Where it just says generate contract. The moment you click on the card, it'll be in the opportunity details. This is where you can literally click on generate contract, right? And for purposes of this, I'm not going to click on one of these long ones and bore you with it, right? But I'll just pick a short and sweet one right now. But if I click update, what's going to happen is it's going to show that contract inside now of in our notes as a survey. Okay. It's going to give you a link. It's going to say complete the survey on whatever contract. And again, if I go back and I made a mistake and I want to switch to a different contract, right? I just do that, click update, and again, go back to my notes. It might take a second to load, but it'll be right there. So now you have your seller finance one as well. And then what you do is you just click on it, right? And again, there's a prerequisite to setting this up. It's already built in your system, but there's a few you got to assign yourself as a user. So it might not sound correctly in the beginning. But just keep that in mind, right? So let's just say I fill this out. I choose a date for the contract. Doesn't really matter. I choose whatever property, whatever my company is, and then maybe additional details of how the deal is going to work out, right? Maybe this is something I send to title to get back my EMD. Maybe it's something, oh, something changed in the contract. We extended our inspection period, whatever it may be, right? Any addendum to any agreement, it's blank. You can do whatever you want based off the terms inside of this. So you go ahead and submit that. It'll send it to both parties. So again, we're not really going to deep dive too much into the contracts. I'm going to make that a full day because, again, it's one of the most important core features of the system. And I think it needs a full day just on its own. So yeah, once you have a contract in hand, well, you'll move your deal to the closed deal. Okay. So let's just say I move this deal and I move it over here. What will typically happen is it's going to mark it as a one deal, but not only that, it's going to move the deal. And now right now I have advanced filters where I can kind of see everything. Typically, you'd only be working on like open deals. So if I hit apply here, you won't even see the closed deals in here. Notice how they disappeared? Because it disappears and it actually moves into the disposition pipeline. So you can actually start marketing the deal. Okay. So, but let's go back to this. Let's bring back the filters so we can keep everything open. But to make life easier for disposition people as well, sometimes it's good to, let's like click on the property and update some disposition info of what you locked up the contract for, what you guys plan on marketing it for, what's the buy now price if that's your strategy. Maybe if it's an on-market deal, what's the MLS price, the ARV, the comps, lockbox info, yada yada. You get the information, right? And again, if you need more fields than this, you can always add more to it. But that will help your disposition team work on deals. So they don't have to ask questions. And of course, you can add, again, more contracts, more details, attachments, and so forth. You can upload your docs here as well. So there's multiple ways to do that. There's a few other things that we have here to the right. Now, you'll notice there's one called listing change, and then in parentheses name. Now, this is very, we honestly had trouble coming up with a name for this stage because if you're working a direct to agent lead or leads, right, that's your go-to. This is if, let's say, the listing agent changed. This is if it's no longer listed, it's expired, right? And so this is where you put your lead. You take your lead that you have right here and you put it in this category, and you're probably going to change the contact associated with that lead. Okay. So this is, again, let's just say this person, Adam, right, is no longer the agent on the property. Well, if I hit cancel and let's say I choose someone else, right? Let's say I choose myself in here. What it'll do is put my information or the new agent or maybe the seller's information in here. And you might need to skip trace their phone number if it's a seller, of course, and get their email to ahead of time. But now what it does is it saves it this way. And I don't know if they're still having this issue, but you might have to double click on that. And when you click on update, you switch the contact to this person, but you kept all the values of the property and all the calculations and all your comments, right? All the fine details, okay, that you already have inside this lead, you kept them all, okay, by just switching the contact. I think this is one of the really big things is a lot of deals fall out of contract with agents, right? A lot of deals that we work on direct to seller end up becoming on market and listed with an agent. And so this is why this is really, really important, is to be able to keep track of this. And then I know you're going to be sending offers, right? And maybe let's say you have a task or a long-term nurture and it's a 2-week follow-up or a 45-day follow-up, right? And it's like, oh, it's no longer listed with the agent. What do I do? Well, now we just throw all those leads in here. And then when we have time, we go and find who the new agent is. We find who the maybe it's not listed with the agent. Go find the seller's information and we can go ahead and update it in here. Okay. So we can put them back through the pipeline and go resend them the offers and send them the follow-ups and everything all over again. It's like that's the process right now. I think some people change this to skip trace or whatever. You can call it whatever you want. So again, well, we had a tough time with the name of this column, but that's essentially what this does, because now anytime I click into this, I can just change directly the contact info and then go ahead and start them back up in the beginning of the process of sending initial offers. So that's how it would work. And so let's say now I change the contact information. Let me actually go and throw them back into, let's say, discovery. So I can go ahead and continue the process, right, with that person. And so now there's a few other columns inside here at the end. We don't really have to talk about DNC too much. It does do auto, but sometimes, maybe someone is so negative that the automation didn't catch it. You can still manually put them in there. But it does like to automatically DNC people. So we're not texting people who unsubscribed or replied stop and so forth. It'll automatically track them over there for you. Now, let's say a deal you're working on and maybe you're in negotiations, maybe you sent a contract with them and they officially signed with somebody else, right? And they closed, it's gone, completely gone. That's where you would throw it in your lost deals. Okay. It's good to keep track of this because on your dashboard, you can, once you put a value in here, let's say you put a value right here for the opportunity. Maybe you were going to make 10K assignment on the deal, or maybe you're going to make 30,000 on a flip, whatever it was, and you mark it as a lost deal, it'll show up on your pipeline of opportunity lost, right? And so that's kind of really important for some of us who like analytics, right? To be able to keep track and know our metrics and know what's going on. And so if you put any lead inside this part of the pipeline, let's say I move this one over here, it's going to move it and it's going to change it to a lost status right away. So you don't really have to change it yourself. It'll automatically do that, but you might want to update the opportunity value. And then lastly is the pending and under contract. So this actually has a 30-day follow-up feature. It sets you a task and a reminder to get back on this deal. Because again, just because we send offers, just because we send out a contract, or maybe we were in negotiations, doesn't mean that they're always going to go with us, right? They might go with another wholesaler, they might go with another investor, another fix and flipper, whatever, right? And so we want to be able to keep track of those leads, right? So that when we do switch them over, let's say I take this one and I switch them over, it's going to set a task and it's going to set it for 30 days ahead of time. And so typically that's when contracts fall out, right? Anywhere between 2 weeks and 30 days. And again, if you want to change the task reminder to 2 weeks, you're more than welcome to. But a typical inspection time is what, 10 to 15 days? The typical close time is 30 days on a property. And again, that could be extended, plus or minus. But this gives you the opportunity to check if that property fell out of contract, right? And when they fall out of contract, well, now that's your chance again to go back and try to structure your deal with them. And so again, that's really important, kind of very similar to pretty much the list change as well. At that point in time, it could fall out of contract and they could lose the listing agent. So just keep that in mind. These are more for follow-ups, more for in case you lose the communication, in case you lose the deal and you want to get back on to that specific property with somebody else, or renegotiate a deal after it falls out. So this is how the acquisition pipeline works.